I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear.
I, Jimmy Carter.
I, Barack Hussein Obama.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
So help you God. So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me God. So help me God.
So help you God. So help me God.
So help me God.
He didn't chase the presidency. He was born into it, with duty carved into his bones and diplomacy in his blood. John Quincy Adams lived a life few could carry, shaped by revolution, war, and impossible expectations. Tonight, we uncover the mind of America's most prepared president and explore the man history nearly forgot to celebrate. At just 7 years old, John Quincy Adams watched the Battle of Bunker Hill unfold from a hilltop, not in a book, but with his own eyes. Born July 11, 1767, in Braintree, Massachusetts, he was no ordinary boy. His father, John Adams, would become America's second president. His mother, Abigail Adams, was a formidable intellect and early advocate for women's rights.
Raised in one of the most prominent political families of the era, Adams would spend his entire life serving his country.
John Quincy's childhood wasn't spent in playgrounds. It was spent on diplomatic missions. By age 10, he was in Europe. Then, at the age of 14, he served as secretary to the U.S. minister in Russia.
Age 14, John Quincy Adams could speak Italian and French, Russian, and, of course, English.
He was very brilliant, read voraciously, remembered everything, and absorbed the revolutionary ideals swirling around him. Raised in the shadow of independence and guided by two powerful parents, John Quincy Adams didn't just grow up in the shadow of a founding father. He grew up in the thick of revolution and diplomacy. By the time most boys were learning to ride, he was crossing oceans with his father, John Adams, absorbing politics from the front row of history. Fluent in French by adolescence, he studied at Leiden University in the Netherlands before graduating Harvard at just 20. Law came next. He trained under the sharp mind of Theophilus Parsons and became a practicing attorney by 1790. But beyond textbooks and treaties, life had surprises. While serving as a diplomat in London, he met Louisa Catherine Johnson, a bright, musically gifted woman born to American parents abroad. They married in 1797.
She would go on to become the only foreign-born First Lady in U.S. history until First Lady Melania Trump.
His education molded his mind, but marriage, fatherhood, and tragedy would soon shape his heart. He was destined for statesmanship, not by birthright alone, but by relentless preparation and exposure to power before he could even vote. Before he ever sat in the Oval Office, John Quincy Adams had already out-diplomatized half of Europe. He wasn't just fluent in languages, he was fluent in power. As U.S. Minister to the Netherlands, Prussia, Russia, and Britain, he navigated courts, kings, and conflicts with quiet brilliance. His masterpiece? The Treaty of Ghent, which ended the War of 1812 without a single American concession, an elegant checkmate on the British Empire. But his boldest move came as Secretary of State, crafting what became the Monroe Doctrine, a bold declaration that warned Europe to keep out of the Americas. It reshaped foreign policy for generations, and though President Monroe signed it, the vision was pure Adams. He was hailed as the most qualified man ever to become president. But charisma? That was another story. Popularity eluded him. Still, what he lacked in charm, he made up for in plans, big ones, including the blueprint for a whole new kind of presidency. John Quincy Adams didn't win the presidency, he claimed it through what critics scornfully called the corrupt bargain. After a deadlocked 1824 election, the House handed him the victory, thanks to Henry Clay's support, who, conveniently, became his Secretary of State.
He pitched a national university, astronomical observatories, and a vast network of roads and canals. He believed the government should build the nation, literally and intellectually. But Congress didn't share his vision. Worst still, the Tariff of Abominations, though meant to protect industry, set the South ablaze with anger. Jacksonians painted him as elitist and out of touch. By 1828, their campaign crushed him. Adams was out. Jackson was in. But Adams wasn't finished. In fact, his next chapter would be even more astonishing, because the real battle began after the White House. However, history measured his legacy in policies, but the man behind them carried burdens only his family truly understood. When John Quincy Adams wasn't debating policy or clashing with Congress, he was tucked away in Quincy, Massachusetts, at a home affectionately known as the Old House at Peacefield. And what a home it was! At home, life was far from peaceful. He and Louisa bore 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. Their only daughter, Louisa Catherine, passed away in infancy, a tragedy that cast a long shadow. Their eldest son, George Washington Adams, named against the wishes of Adams's own parents, struggled with alcoholism and passed away mysteriously, either by accident or despair, falling overboard a steamboat. Their second son, John, met an early end too, after years of hardship managing an unprofitable family mill. By the 1830s, only one son remained, Charles Francis Adams. He would carry the family's public service mantle forward, becoming a leading anti-slavery voice among the conscience Whigs. For all of Adams's political greatness, his private world was laced with grief, loss, and the weight of generational expectation. But then, even his moments of peace and chaos needed discipline, because letting go simply wasn't in his nature. You'd think a U.S. president would have a strict sense of decorum, not John Quincy Adams. Before most people even rubbed the sleep from their eyes, Adams was already neck-deep in the Potomac River, literally. He swam nude in it almost every morning, a habit so famous that one daring female journalist once sat on his clothes just to land an interview. And when he wasn't diving into cold waters, he was housing an alligator, yes, an actual alligator, in the East Room of the White House.
His personal quirks were equally captivating. Adams had a pet alligator, which he kept in the White House during his presidency.
A bizarre gift from Marquis de Lafayette. His meals were surprisingly humble for a man of his stature. Fruit for breakfast, light tea in the evening, and his favorite soup prepared by his wife Louisa. He ran on rigid daily routines and penned over 14,000 pages of journal entries across his life. Discipline, eccentricity, and intellect, Adams had them in spades. Not everything he valued could be found in ink, ritual, or riverbanks. Some of it sat quietly in ledgers. He wasn't the kind of man to flaunt gold or gamble away riches on fleeting pleasures. Despite being born into the influential and well-off Adams family of Massachusetts, John Quincy Adams lived a surprisingly restrained financial life. He inherited wealth, yes, but he wore it more like an old coat than a crown. Adjusted for today's standards, his net worth would clock in at around $23 million, a comfortable sum by any measure. But he didn't build that from shrewd investments or land speculation. His money flowed mostly from public service salaries, legal work,
and the sizable estate passed down from his parents. After the White House years, he earned from book royalties and speaking engagements, but it was never about the money for him. Adams believed in service over self, legacy over luxury. His was a fortune quietly kept, not paraded through marble halls.
But what truly set him apart wasn't his wallet. It was what he did after leaving the Oval Office. Because while most ex-presidents faded into comfort, John Quincy Adams was just getting started. They thought his story was over. The sixth president, gray and bowed by political bruises, shuffled off the stage. But John Quincy Adams wasn't done. In fact, his second act was just beginning. At an age when most men of his era faded into quiet retirement, Adams did the unthinkable. He ran for Congress and won. For the next 17 years, he became a force of nature in the House of Representatives, not just a seat warmer, he was a lion in the chamber. While others whispered, Adams roared. And nothing lit that fire more than slavery. He became the abolitionists' secret weapon, unrelenting and fiercely articulate, earning the nickname Old Man Eloquent. But eloquence wasn't all he had grit. When Congress tried to silence anti-slavery petitions with the gag rule, Adams didn't back down. He exposed its unconstitutional core, and after years of persistent resistance, helped bring it down. Even more famously, he stood before the Supreme Court to defend enslaved Africans in the Amistad case. A former president fighting for their freedom? Unheard of. But he didn't care. He saw injustice, and he rose. This wasn't a legacy building. This was personal. Adams believed a republic that tolerated slavery couldn't call itself free. He fought not for applause, but for principle. And then, one day, in 1848, right there on the floor of Congress, mid-debate, something terrible happened to him, turning him into an everlasting history. One moment he was debating on the House floor, fiercely defending a petition against slavery, and the next, he collapsed. John Quincy Adams, the only former president to later serve in Congress, fell to the ground mid-sentence in 1848. The chamber fell silent. He was rushed to the speaker's room, where, for 2 days, he drifted in and out of consciousness. Surrounded by colleagues and the weight of history, his final words, simple, profound, "This is the last of earth. I am content." A statesman to the very end, even his death felt symbolic. He passed away where he lived, among principles, arguments, and the pulse of American democracy. The nation mourned deeply. Bells tolled, flags were lowered, and eulogies echoed from pulpit to press. A lion of the Republic was gone, but not forgotten. He was later laid to rest in Quincy, Massachusetts.
Adams' casket was taken from Washington northwards on a train to be buried in Quincy, Massachusetts.
And though death took him, history had just begun to judge him and the legacy he left behind.
To celebrate the history of Adams County and Quincy, this was done through a celebration and learning experience about the sixth president of the United States, John.
He didn't just serve the Republic, he obsessed over it. John Quincy Adams shaped the moral compass of a nation long before that was fashionable. He's the true architect behind the Monroe Doctrine, giving it spine while Monroe lent the name. Out of office, he wasn't done, not even close. In Congress, he raged against slavery, defended the Amistad captives, and fought for public education and scientific advancement. His daily diaries? A goldmine of political honesty, ambition, and fire. Oh, and about that alligator in the White House? Real. A gift from a French general. Because why not? He lived and passed away for service, collapsing on the House floor during debate. Even in death, John Quincy Adams whispered duty, justice, and legacy.
A fact most people never hear? John Quincy Adams spoke more languages than most presidents in U.S. history. By adulthood, he was fluent in Latin, Greek, French, Dutch, German, and could read Italian and Spanish.
His linguistic skills weren't just for show. They helped him negotiate treaties and read foreign documents firsthand, giving him a sharp diplomatic edge throughout his career. So if this deep dive into the relentless brilliance of Adams fired you up, go ahead and smash that subscribe button like it's a stubborn congressional gag rule, and drop your favorite Adams moment in the comments. Because history isn't just stories, it's stamina.